Welcome, welcome to the webinar here. I'm excited to share with you. I'm really thrilled you're tuning in. And we'll go for about an hour today, and I'll cover basically my story. I'll do a little housekeeping, and then I'll also extend this invite to you to join me in my next biggest project and how we can work together this next year. So again, just a little technical housekeeping stuff as we're getting going. If you are tuned in and are able to hear everything okay, it would be great to either hear from you via Skype, or you can shoot me a little Facebook message and just let me know that everything's sounding good and looking good at your end, that you can see my screen, that you can hear everything okay as well. So I'll give folks a minute to do that. All right. Good. So again, as in the course of this presentation, if you're having any technical problems, I am here. I am online. I am wired. So go ahead and shoot me either a message on Skype, or you can do a little Facebook post or send me a tweet, and I will love to hear from you in real time. Okay. Well, here's the official welcome to this webinar, and I've decided to title this webinar "The 7 Biggest Obstacles I've Faced as a Real-Time Composer and How I Have Overcome Them." And I'll include along the way some of my own completely spectacular mistakes, failures, strategies, and successes. Let me flip over one place here. So welcome. I am so glad you're here. I've really been looking forward to this for a while. And I just want to give you a little bit of a housekeeping. Again, we're going to last about 45 to 60 minutes on this call. I really want to respect your time, and I'm honored by the fact that you're here joining us today. So I'm going to aim to wrap up in about an hour. And I'll leave a little time for some Q&A near the end. You can either send me, like I said, something over Skype or something via email or your favorite social media. I'm on them all, because I'd love to hear back from you if you have any questions on what we've covered in this webinar, or questions about the Real-Time Music Academy. More about that coming your way. And then, like I said, go ahead and message me in real time with any questions or any technical feedback. I am keeping one eye on different social media and keeping one eye on my mail and my Skype. So if you have any feedback for me, love to hear from you, either with questions near the end or along the way if there's anything with sound or with the sharing the screen. I would love to hear from you. Again, on Skype or on Facebook, Twitter, or good old-fashioned Gmail, you can grab me at emazunik. So go ahead and stay in touch over the course of this next hour. I'm looking forward to interacting. So let me start. Go ahead. I'm going to start with my story. I know some of you really well, and some of you just met over the past year. But I wanted to begin with really giving a bit of my history, so you know where I'm coming from, you know what my background is, and you can sort of join me in this journey I've made so far in my composing. And I wanted to start back at the very, very, very beginning. I started piano at the tender age of 4 for my hand-eye coordination. It was kindergarten, and my parents and my teachers were quite concerned that I was failing at this test of cutting construction paper, which is a big deal as a 4-year-old. I say that knowing that it's a little bit tongue-in-cheek, but also at that age it's really, really important to make sure you're coordinated. I was in fact so nearsighted that folks thought I was a well-behaved child. I simply did not get off the couch or sofa because I couldn't see down to my feet. My mom to this day will tell a story of she taking me out from the optometrist, from the eye doctor's office. I'd just gotten my first pair of glasses at around the same age, and I was staring at my feet like I'd never seen them before. And she was just devastated that I hadn't really been able to see my feet before that moment. So I started piano at age 4. My dad always said, when people asked if he played an instrument, he always said he played the checkbook supporting us. My mother played a little piano growing up, and I think she always wished she continued. So they definitely were very supportive all along the way, making sure that I always had music lessons and were there. I wanted to go ahead and share this. There we go. That's a photo I found recently at my grandparents' place in New Jersey. This is me around the same age with a humongous head and equally big glasses. And there we are in front of the first home I grew up in Iowa. I just love that picture. There I am, ready to conquer the world with a sheepish grin and my lunch. So again, I began piano at the tender age of 4. I did it for hand-eye coordination. And then I started studying classical music, or as I like to call it, the music of dead white guys, up until my teenage years. And then I continued studying classical music up through even today. But along the way, I started and soon after quit trumpet. For any of you who might have played or continuing to play a brass instrument, you know that braces are one of the worst things for a brass career. So I started before I had braces. I got some orthodontic work, and as I can well testify, there's nothing more uncomfortable than having a lip in between two pieces of hard, cold metal. It's not my idea of a good time. But I was really inspired by a couple players. I can think back to some of the first recordings I listened to when I was starting to play trumpet. I was in love with Clifford Brown. I absolutely adored his sound, adored his playing, and he, for me, was exactly where it was at. In fact, about a month ago, I think, I was out with my wife at a local cafe here, and they were playing a Clifford Brown CD, the same tunes I'd heard growing up as I started to study trumpet. And I could still, to this day, sing along note for note with these songs. They really, really were embedded deep within me. And of course, as a piano player, the one, the only, Thelonious Sphere Monk. I love this picture of him in the hat. I really had fun tracking this one down. He, for me, was as much punk as he was jazz, with his really individual, expressive voice. And those two were definitely big influences on me growing up. So then came high school, junior high school. I started diving into jazz piano. I still remember to this day the first time I had someone write out a voicing for me on a simple blues progression. I had no idea what improvisation was about. I had studied Suzuki, so I had some inkling of what it meant to use an ear and use your ear in playing piano. But I was really, really, really into jazz piano from the get-go. Also studied some on trumpet, but again, braces killed that. And then going to college, I studied at the University of Iowa for piano performance. I got another piece of paper there. And along the way, I had a great experience at Iowa. Just to backtrack a bit, I had a bit of a decision to make whether I would go to Iowa or to another great school, Lawrence University, which has an amazing conservatory. And it was down to the wire, and Iowa's scholarship package was tough to beat. And I'm really grateful I went with Iowa on this one, because I had so many good experiences. John Rapson there, the head of the jazz department, was a great influence on me. I also got a chance to play with some live rock bands and to do some accompaniment for local theater productions and collaborate and study and accompany dance classes. I, for a while, accompanied ballet classes every week, which taught me, I think, more about composition than any composition class I took, by the way. And I liked it so much, in fact, that I decided to get a master's in jazz studies and stay there for another piece of paper in composition and performance. I was really a guinea pig at this time for this new program. I was, in fact, squatting in the jazz studies. Actually, I was squatting in the piano performance department, and on paper was one of the worst classical musicians you could find. But along the way, as I was working on this degree, it got officially approved. So for a while, I was actually working on a degree that didn't exist. But I was really glad to be a test pilot and a guinea pig, and one of the early people to really try out this new Master's in Jazz Studies program at the University of Iowa. So here's my story on how I got to know about sound painting. And this segues into the next part of my story. I was on the break at the University of Iowa's library, and I read an article in the Jazz Changes magazine. So there I was in between classes, on break, in between rehearsals, and I just picked up a magazine at random to begin drifting through, idly flipping through the pages. And I came across an interview with Walter Thompson, and the interview was written by Sarah Weaver. And just a side note, for those of you who may not know, Sarah Weaver was actually one of the first people Walter taught sound painting to. I believe the first one, if I remember correctly, was Todd Reynolds, who was a violin player in Walter's orchestra for many years, is still working with sound painting to this day, has collaborated with folks in the Bang on a Can group, and also done a lot of teaching and was in the Ethel String Quartet. But Sarah Weaver was, I believe, the next person to study sound painting with Walter. And she had conducted this interview with Walter for Jazz Changes magazine. And this interview hit me. I said, oh my goodness, here's a guy who's doing, at this point in his life, what I want to be doing 20 years from now. Or forget 20 years from now, what I want to be doing today. I was really inspired by how he's working across disciplines and working with improvisation and composition and his influences. So everything was really, really interesting to me about Walter. So interesting, in fact, that I decided to go ahead and contact him out of the blue, completely cold. I got Sarah's contact information, asked her how to contact Walter, and I was really nervous about first contacting Walter. I picked up the phone. I still remember I'm in Iowa at my dorm room, and I give him a call. I believe I left a message. And I was so disarmed when he was so warm and so receiving of me on that call. I remember thinking that here's this big New York composer. Here I am, this lowly student here in Iowa. He's going to completely blow me off. But I had to contact him anyway. And he was, from the get-go, from the downbeat, so warm and very interested and curious in what I had to say and what was happening in Iowa. He began asking me questions about what was going on there in Iowa, what the scene was, what people were doing at the university, was there collaboration between departments. So that really, really sealed the deal for me. And I decided to take up his invite to come up to Ann Arbor. And for those of you who have never taken a Greyhound bus, I would recommend that you do it once, and only once in your life. Greyhound bus is definitely not the most, shall I say, comfortable way to travel. I think it's about an 8-hour trip in the car. It felt like 12 or 14, but it was a really long trip. Went overnight, tried to sleep there on the bus, couldn't really get any sleep. So here I am, stumbling into Ann Arbor to meet Walter at a workshop that Sarah was organizing. And I will never forget to this day, there was a trombone player practicing way down the hallway from where this workshop was. And Walter just turned and broke that fourth wall and asked one of the players on stage to relate to that trombone player. And that completely blew my mind. I'd never seen anyone do anything like that. He invited me up to try out a few sound painting gestures, and I remember whispering in his ear, "What's the gesture for a bass player?" I'd just learned, but I was instantly hooked. And after that workshop, Walter invited me to a residency he was giving in 2000 up in Woodstock. And I was so thrilled and so obsessed with sound painting and with learning more that I immediately said, yes, 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 I will go out. So I went out on my summer break. I first met him in the spring, and then that summer of 2000, I went out to Woodstock for a residency there. And at the time, the residencies were more focused on the Walter Thompson Orchestra and developing work for that group. And this is a little bit before they started turning into really full-blown think tanks. It was sort of on the cusp of where Walter was trying out some new ideas of inviting people in and starting to teach them the language. So I went there and had an absolute blast. Was there for a full month in Woodstock. And there's when I began private studies with Walter Thompson, got certified in sound painting, and that was in 2000, and the rest has just been an amazing experience. I'll go ahead and flip through to this next picture here. You can see me with several other folks. There's Vincent, or Vinny as I like to call him up front, and we're at a think tank there. We're enjoying the evening at a restaurant, local restaurant in Woodstock. Here's another picture of me, a few pounds heavier, with some other fine folks at the top of Mount Trimper in New York. Gorgeous place in the Catskills. If you haven't had a chance to visit, it's absolutely magical place. So then I came back to Iowa and was so excited, I decided to put together my own group. I started putting up posters, started putting up flyers, and promptly forgot almost everything I knew about sound painting. I remember this one moment where I was looking in the mirror at myself, trying to find the gesture for woodwinds on my body. I couldn't find it for the life of me. I was putting my hands on my head and on my back. I just couldn't remember what this one simple gesture was. And when I found it, I was so excited. I wrote it down. I wrote down a description. I think I might have taken a picture as well. But it was a slow going, definitely a new experience, but that didn't stop me from being totally enthusiastic. I put up flyers all over the theater and music building, and slowly but surely I formed the Gamut, which is the name of my first sound painting group. And I think there's still a handful of burned CDs of our first recording out there. I don't want to call them collector items, but they're definitely few and far between. And that group was slow going, but it gave me a great learning experience. And when I say slow going, I mean many weeks I was the only person there in the rehearsal room. Absolutely the only person. But I was so stubborn, I decided to stick to my guns, and just stick to that normal weekly rehearsal time. And slowly but surely, I built up a group. We developed more and more and more experience together, and I've made more and more and more mistakes. But I was so glad and so honored that they would let me come in and try something new and basically be my guinea pigs in some sense. Here's a picture of us. There's a picture of me with some clean shaven with some sideburns, and there at my feet, face down, is my brother Greg, also a great musician. And this is circa 2003. This is the photo shoot we did for the album. Very artsy, all black, but we had a lot of fun. So then I began teaching workshops in the area, began teaching workshops in high schools and universities, and met up with Jeffrey Grell, an incredible, enthusiastic, very talented horn player. And we started giving workshops all around the U.S. In Washington, we had a great residency. Very cold. I'll tell you more about that someday. But very cold, but very productive residency out in Washington. We went down to Texas or to Wisconsin. And also, he booked us some shows and workshops in Europe and London, and also some in Switzerland. My first chance to really visit Switzerland. What a beautiful, beautiful place. And what an interesting accent the Swiss German have. I grew even more in trying, in failing, and succeeding. And I was so grateful to learn on the job and really cut my teeth in the moment, making my mistakes, learning along the way. And I wanted to go ahead and continue and share what I've been learning with you. You can see here's a picture of a sound painting workshop I was giving. I think I still had some convincing to do for a couple of these horn players. Then, cue drum roll, I moved to New York City in 2005. I packed up my car with my books, my clothes, and my keyboard, and came out to move to New York and study more intensely with Walter, and was able to become an associate in the Walter Thompson Orchestra, associate sound painter, and also was there for the birth of the New York Sound Painting Orchestra, which was a really amazing experience. And I've met so many people in that group, and we've still worked together to this day in different spin-off groups and different configurations. And that was a chance to really meet a lot of young improvisers, and for Walter to launch and spread sound painting a little bit further in New York. And it was such a great chance to hit the ground running and meet so many players, get some teaching gigs, get some performance opportunities. But I really wanted to form my own group. And as good as the New York Sound Painting Orchestra was, I was really adamant that I had to start my own group and have a group that I could own 100%. So I decided to take a small group out of that ensemble, the New York Sound Painting Orchestra, and formed Zaha in 2006. My friend John commissioned us to do a piece based on human bowling. I believe there's some video up online of that. And Zaha, by the way, many people have asked what it stands for. I love the sound and the shape, but it's a bit of an homage to Zaha Hadid, a great architect. Very, very imaginative. So we started in 2006, and I'll share with you a couple other images. There's us at I-Beam in Brooklyn, circa 2010, with many of the same players and some alumni. And here's me at the helm, driving the tour van for our spring tour in 2011. Good thing there's a GPS there at the bottom. Keep us from getting lost. And in 2011, I decided to continue, actually, I decided to launch a new Sound Painting Saturdays series on YouTube. And I had been doing a weekly project the year before of a song a week, and I decided I wanted to focus really heavily on sound painting. So I launched a series, and I said, I'm going to do a new video every week. Some weeks it was on Tuesday, some weeks it was on Saturday, but I put out 52 videos, and I was really grateful and overwhelmed to look at. Recently, I decided to tally up how many total views the series got, and the series got over 4,000 total views. And I've gotten comments from Brazil, from France, Belgium, and the US, all across the world. And it's definitely helped me to deepen some relationships and make some new introductions with people. So I'm so glad and so grateful for that series. I'm glad I stuck with it. And I'm glad that it's really spurred a big conversation with some very, very talented and creative and imaginative people like yourself. I decided to, as we transition from this part of my background and my story, I want to go ahead and tell you a bit more about this interaction I had with folks through the Sound Painting Saturday series. I decided to survey people, really informally, send an email, send up some videos and say, hey, what is your biggest frustration? And what are your big dreams for working with real-time composing? And I got a variety of different responses, many, many thoughtful and very lengthy emails, very in-depth. But in those emails, in those responses and comments, I saw several common themes occur, including some of the following, like, how can I train my ensemble to give me really strong, really creative responses? Or another one I summed up as, how do I convince my school's administration that real-time composing is valuable? People would say, I know this is great, I can see the value in it, but I have trouble communicating that value to somebody who has no idea what I do, or somebody who's never seen sound painting, for example. How do I really bring them on board? Another big one I came across was people really, really curious as to what other composers are up to. What are people doing? How can we share ideas? I came across this time and time again, and I really, really think there's a big, big need and desire for some continued communication and conversation in between these think tanks that have happened for the past several years. So, over the past 11 years, I've learned so much from my mistakes, from my accomplishments, from traveling, from studying, from talking to you all, from getting comments and feedback, from falling flat on my face, from having some amazing successes. The tour last year with Zaha was so amazing. We had a successful fundraising campaign, and we got to meet some new audiences all along the East Coast. But I think I've learned as much from my failures as I have from my successes. And I think the real key ingredient is, for better or for worse, I'm completely obsessed. you can call me a geek, and I will wear that title proudly. I'm a geek for working in real-time composing. I will, in fact, wake up some mornings and I realize I've dreamed a dream where I'm composing in real time using sound painting, and I can hear and see the composition. I can remember the gestures. Every once in a while I get a new idea for a gesture, but more often than not, it's just a full-blown piece. Sometimes it's a little strange, many times in fact. But that's how deep this obsession runs. That's even sneaked into my dream life. And like I said, I see a demand from other people who are just as obsessed as me. I see a real hunger and demand for more consistent, more in-depth training, sharing, exchange, innovation, new ideas. So that brings me to my commitment to you as we segue out of the first part of this webinar into the next part. I want to share from my mistakes, just be completely open with you, share what I've learned in order to save you time and energy and really help accelerate what you want to do as a real-time composer. So I'm honored you're here on this call, and I really want to leave you with some practical next steps you can take away and share from you what I've done to overcome these obstacles and the steps I've taken to grow as a composer and the things I'm continuing to do as a real-time composer. So I want to leave you by the end of this call with some definite practical next steps to take and have you take something away of value from our time together today. And I also want to invite those of you who might be interested to work with me in a deeper way and join me in this next phase, my next journey, which is the Real-Time Music Academy. I want to extend an invitation so you know how you can continue to work with me in a deeper way, and we can continue to stay in touch. So whether or not you decide to work with me after today, though, I definitely want to leave you with the 7 biggest obstacles and the 7 solutions I've found to those obstacles. So I'd encourage you to go ahead and, if you haven't already, turn off any email or turn off any phones so you can really stay focused, because what I'm going to share with you, I'm really convinced is of a lot of big value, and I would love your focus and your attention, and I think you'll get more out of it too if you're 100% focused. I know I tend to have 5 programs open, and if you saw my internet browser, you'd see tons of tabs, but go ahead and shut those down. Grab a piece of paper, grab a pen, grab something you can take notes with, and let's go ahead and launch into here the 7 biggest obstacles. Number 1, the number 1 obstacle I see in real-time composers and in myself is a lack of clarity. And what do I mean by lack of clarity? Well, the first thing I see is sloppy or hasty signing. And I know that's a big obstacle for a lot of people, where as they're signing with a group, they may go so fast or may go very sloppy, may not enunciate. My wife will tell you I tend to be a big mumbler, so I'm working on my enunciation in everyday speech. And the same holds true for composing in real time, whether using sound painting or any other gestures. Signing clearly is so key. And often I see that people's imagination surpasses their body. And what do I mean by that? I mean that you can see people's individual imagination as composers start to outstrip and outpace what they can do physically. And I'm all for stretching the limits, but our bodies are really, I would say, very conservative places, in the sense of we can think of something instantaneously, just like that. But our bodies take a while to catch up to that, and take a while for us to ingrain new habits and really make something second nature physically and get that muscle memory. So that lack of clarity and that lack of muscle memory is really such a big obstacle I see. So, what's the solution I propose? Videotape. If you haven't already been videotaping yourself, I would highly encourage you to start videotaping everything. Rehearsals, performances, individual practice in front of the mirror. And go ahead and record and review that. go ahead and tape that. Look at yourself. Look at it afterwards. Say, is this clear? Does this make sense? Can I follow this? And get some outside perspective on it. And find someone you really trust and share that with them. It could be your ensemble. It could be another composer you really trust. And go ahead and share that and see if it makes sense to them too. And if there's someone you really trust their critique or criticism, share that videotape with them. I have to tell you, I was completely shocked. I remember the first time I really saw a videotape of my sound painting. And I had been doing a lot of mirror work and thinking, I'm pretty good at this. I've got this together. I am pretty with it. I'm on top of the game. And I saw my whole group gesture, for instance, and I was just shocked at how sloppy and flabby it looked. So I would really highly encourage you. Mirror work is good, but videotape is even better. And if you can, when you're rehearsing with a group, if you're working with musicians, I'll focus on groups that use musicians first. If you work with musicians, I'd also encourage you to use some way to use audio. If you record it as a videotape, try turning off the tape and just listening to the piece and ask yourself, does this make sense? Does this hang together? I remember the first time I did a radio show, and people were very skeptical that this piece would work on air because so much of my work as a real-time composer is with gesture and with movement and using sound painting gestures, and people thought it wouldn't hold up, but I was really surprised to listen afterwards and figure out that it held up. So for those of you working with musicians, go ahead and also listen to the audio. So the number one obstacle I see again is lack of clarity, and my solution and proposal is to videotape everything. All right, let's go on. So the second biggest obstacle I see in people working in real-time composing and that I've experienced is that people frankly don't listen. If you're working with dancers or you're working with actors, you could also say they're not watching. They're not using their eyes like big ears and big sponges. I often find that the composition never breathes or the composition never develops. It could get in one area. It could stay either stagnant for a long time and just never move, or the piece could be so frantic and with so many changes and so much signing that you never, as a listener or observer, have a chance to breathe, have a chance to watch, have a chance to observe and soak it in. Another way I see this is that a composer often gets stuck in their own ideas or their concepts for the piece, and they shut down and stop listening to what their group is giving them. You can almost see it. It's almost like a mental, they're not saying it out loud, but you can see it in their bodies, or they'll look up at the ceiling and try to remember, what was that gesture I was going to do next? So it's really, really obvious when a composer gets stuck in their own concepts for where this piece should go, and that really takes them out of the moment, takes them out of listening, takes them out of what is going to really help them drive this piece, and really will make this piece open up. For me, I love that surprise of real-time composing, and I love that surprise. And a lot of people, sometimes it gets a little overwhelming, or a lot of people get so married to their own individual ideas as composers that they stop listening, they stop watching, they stop receiving. So what's my solution? I said it before, receiving. And this will differ from a future point. Point number 5 is somewhat similar to this, but really receiving has as much to do with inspiring the group to give you a strong response and then say yes to that offering they give you and receive it. So there's really definitely a strong leadership. I'm not saying listening is just a passive thing, or listening is somehow putting aside your own individual ideas as a composer. It definitely is an exchange. It definitely is a give and a take, where you offer a strong idea and you get a strong response from the group. But the key ingredient that's often missing in a lot of real-time composing I see in here is that people are really saying yes to whatever offering their group is giving them and really taking it in. And I can tell you as a player too, when I see and feel that composer take my idea and run with it, oh, there's nothing like it. I am so on board and I'm so committed to give really, really strong, my best ideas to that composer because I know they're going to say yes to it and take it and we're going to make something together. And I know they're really listening, and that is so really, really beautiful as a player. So you're going to really inspire your group, not only by leading them, but also receiving what they give you. So number 2, don't listen is the obstacle, and the solution, receive what your ensemble gives to you. All right. I'm just going to keep moving on here. We've got a few more to cover. We're on number 3. This is what I like to call the shiny object syndrome. And what do I mean by the shiny object syndrome? That's this obsession with the newest, latest, greatest gesture. And I can tell you, I fall prey to this every day. I am so on the hunt for this newest, greatest, interesting gesture. And more often than not, a gesture list can get really long on definitions, have a whole slew of gestures and ideas, but those ideas are short on rehearsal time. That is, you've got a ton of things to cover, and you don't really drill and get those really, really well versed in practice with your ensemble. But I'm getting a little ahead of myself. Let me stick and sort of let you feel this obstacle of the shiny object syndrome, because I think this is so pervasive and this is so tempting. Thinking that, for instance, you might say to yourself, man, if I only had this new fill in the blank, this new gesture for this, or for that, for X, for Y, then that'll just completely transform my composing. That'll just completely take it to a new level. Sometimes it might, but more often than not, I really feel composing is like cooking. I love cooking. I want to do more of it. I'm surrounded by a ton of restaurants that are amazing, so it's definitely a big challenge. New York. But I think it's like cooking. I think it's like thinking that maybe a cool new garlic press or this interesting little shredder or, fill in the blank, this high-speed blender, some lemon zester is going to somehow transform your cooking. But more often than not, what really makes great cooking? Fresh ingredients, a lot of love, a sharp knife, a clean cutting board. Those basics are what you keep coming back to again and again. Salt, butter, love it. So cooking, I really think, is a great analogy for thinking about what really, really makes a great composition. And it's not this new shiny object syndrome, thinking that some little device or some new thing is going to really make your composing take off. So I plead guilty as charged to obstacle number 3, shiny object syndrome. But it's so pervasive. And what's the solution? Your personal glossary. This, I think, is so key. When I started doing this for myself, I really feel my composing took off by leaps and bounds. I'd encourage you to transcribe everything you do. Transcribe your pieces and build your own list of gestures. To say, what is my basic 43 gestures? What are my basic sort of stock of gestures I keep using again and again and again and again and keep coming back to? Because that's going to give you a direction as to where your work should go. I can't tell you where your work should go, but you will know when you start to transcribe your own pieces and build your own list of gestures, of phrases, and start to study it. My friend Lily, who was in the New York Sound Painting Orchestra, recently gave some teaching workshops down in Texas and started to develop her own version of a sound painting notational system. And I know there's some out there. I know Walter's used some for his piece Colors, and Lily's started to develop a really beautiful notation as well that if you'd be interested, contact me after. We can see if I can put you in touch with her. But it gets really useful for transcribing your own work and making your own shorthand. I started to develop my own shorthand for gestures, and I would just watch or listen to a piece and begin transcribing what were the phrases I was using. And then I keep this running list of what gestures I'm using, and start to really develop my own individual, personalized glossary. And start to explore all the combinations and phrasings available. I have to really thank Etienne. E.T. gave out a really amazing email. I don't know if you had a chance to see that, but he sent out a great email with the permutations and all the different combinations of phrases that are available when you combine just the basic sound painting gestures. Just a handful, just a few dozen. So really go ahead and start to then explore all these combinations and phrasings and different ways you can work with gestures, your own sort of subset of composing gestures, and start to explore it and see what's already waiting for you in the work you already do. And instead of looking outside of yourself for that next greatest, fanciest, shiny thing, this newest gesture, go and start to look within yourself and within your own work and start to explore what you've already started to look into as a composer and start to explore your own individual voice. And I really think developing your own personal glossary for your own study is so key. All right. So let me get through a few of these. Number 4 is poor communication. And what do I mean by that? I don't just mean, like I was talking about in number 1, sloppy signing. I'm talking about verbal communication and your way you interact with people, both your players and audiences. I'm talking about people having a difficulty enrolling new audiences and new players and maintaining those players in their own groups. I've seen it. I've experienced it. I've seen missed opportunities to gather emails, to gather fans, to get new partners, to get performers. And I think this is really, really, really telling. I can think of one example when, I think it was 2005, 2006, I was leading the New York Sound Painting Orchestra, opening up for a Buto dancer as part of this festival. And we had a full house. I'm talking, I think, about 250, 300 people, packed house. They were right with it. I started signing them. They were on top of it. The group was sharp. Got a really, really strong response from people and a great reception. Afterwards, people are saying, oh, how can I find out more about this? How can I have a mailing list? There was a real big buzz. And I think it's one of my big regrets that I was not poised to really capitalize on that. I made a big mistake by not having my email list ready, by not having the chance to know how to talk to people about what I was doing and get them excited about it. And I think I really, really missed a big opportunity to grow my work and to grow my audience. So I think this is another big obstacle. This is poor communication, not knowing how to talk about what you do. Because people ask you, what is this? What do you mean by real-time composing? What do you mean, what is sound painting? Tell me about this work. People are interested and want to see if they can participate and can join what you're doing. But so often, and again, I've experienced this, I see people not able to really communicate clearly and effectively with their ensembles, with their players, and with new audiences. And my solution is what I call the 15-second elevator speech. And that's simply, imagine yourself in an elevator with someone, maybe it's a record executive, maybe it's someone who's running a festival, maybe you're at a party, and someone says, what do you do? And there's your chance to really grab their attention and not give them the whole speech about what you do, but just give them a little, like a teaser or a trailer for a film, a little concise elevator speech using everyday language, down-to-earth language. People ask me what I do. I've started to say, I'm a composer. I compose in real time with ensembles, and we all discover the piece in the moment together. It's always a surprise. And people often say, oh, that's interesting. Tell me more. And then I'll launch into just talking about sound painting, give them a definition of sound painting, and tell them about the tools I use. But I so often find that we as composers get so enamored with the features of what we do, we start talking about, well, sound painting is this, it's a sign language, you can compose live, it's this, and there are over so many gestures, and fill in the blank, fill in the blank. We start really geeking out, because we're geeks, about all the cool features of what we do. We start geeking out about that, and we fail to talk about sort of the results or the impact or what it might feel like to someone who's not as deep into it as we are. So I often talk about the results of what a piece is and not the intricate features of it. And often, when I use this really compelling, quick introduction, it leaves that listener curious for more details. So they might be another player. They go, oh, well, do you have some upcoming rehearsals where I can come check it out? Or someone might say, oh, that sounds interesting. Do you do workshops? Or when can I come see a show? Do you have a mailing list? And then I've got people on board, and they're curious, and they want to know more. And then, based on their interest, I might go really in-depth with them. Tell them about sound painting. Tell about my story, shared it like I shared it with you. Go really in-depth with them on the history and give them a lot of details. But up front, knowing how to give that really 15-second, concise, as I call it, elevator speech. You're trapped in an elevator with somebody, and you got to introduce yourself really quickly. New York's great for that, by the way. If you want some practice, come out here, visit me. We'll spend a day together. We'll go around. We'll work on introducing ourselves, and we'll get really good really quick about using this 15-second elevator speech. All right, number 5. This one I call rigidity. Rigidity. And it's where a composer misses those great opportunities for surprise, where they have a chance to really take a piece in a new direction, or they have a chance to take a piece in a new unexpected twist. They have a chance to go somewhere they hadn't even anticipated, and they miss it. I often see it a lot of times with endings. I'll hear a piece or see a piece and go, oh, at least for me, that was a great, great opportunity to find an amazing ending to this piece. And someone was just, similar to what I was talking about earlier, wasn't listening, wasn't able to receive what the group was giving them. And this usually for me shows up in a couple different ways. Either people are really, really bullheaded in the sense of they've got their way and they're going to get it. By hook or by crook, as I would say. They're going to get their way with the group. Or, a lot of times, I'll see people maybe be timid or insecure. And they don't know how to deal with all the surprise. So they'll simplify a piece, or they'll shut it down, or they'll just step back and stop leading and just say, well, these are great improvisers. Let them go. But I can tell you, even the best improviser really is looking to be challenged and looking to explore a new direction. And is really, frankly, I think, hungry for some leadership when they've come and worked with you and are working with you in this context of real-time composing. Great. So you can see that I have now got this slide here up on the bottom of the screen. I have no idea how I did that. You're just going to have to roll with it. We are live. You're just seeing that. So you get to see a little sneak preview of what's coming up here. Let me give it one more chance here. I tell you, I'm going to pop out of this, and we're going to go back to the screen here. Give me 1 second. There we go. All right. Thank you, tech support. All right. I love it. So, talking about rigidity, either being really timid and insecure or really strong and bullheaded and not finding those opportunities for surprise and dancing with the group and really being flexible. And that is the solution. Simply flexibility. Learning how to cultivate that flexibility, to go with the flow. And some people may disagree with me on this, but my philosophy in working with groups is to really go with the flow of a mistake in your practice before correcting. I'll let something go. I'll ask them to continue. I'll say, develop this. I'll go ahead and make a note. I'll literally write a note to myself so I won't forget. And then on a break or in a couple minutes, I'll stop and say, you know, I was really trying to go for this. You missed this. You misread this. I think we should go more this direction. But I don't do it there in the moment, because what I really want to train, more than a correct interpretation of a gesture, what I really, really want to instill in a group is learning how to go with the flow and offer me a bold response. And that really starts to develop a trust when the group knows that they can put anything out there and you are going to be able to flow with it. When the group knows that and really trusts that, oh, watch out. Then is when your group is going to take off and really start to take you on a ride, a fun ride. So I'd encourage you to go ahead and trust your ensemble to show you that next step. You know that feeling where you're in a piece, audience is there, it's a full house, you've done the promotion, the players are there, the lighting's together, and you're 10 minutes into the piece and you have no idea where to go next. I mean, you're absolutely clueless. It's like you're in this thick fog, I like to call it, and you just have no idea where to go. Inside, you are sweating bullets, and you say, how am I going to get out of this one? And I can tell you from experience, every time I have shut down and started to go inside of my own shell and started to think about and doubt and think, how can I take this to the next level? What is next? And I start to melt down. And then usually afterwards I'll listen to or watch the piece and I'll see that piece will suffer because of that. But every time I've had a chance to be there, and then I trust my ensemble to show me that next step and show me where to go, I've had nothing but success. The group will always give you even just a small little red thread, I like to call it, into whatever that next transition needs to be. You just have to listen, and this goes back to that listening and that watching and receiving and being flexible, because the piece isn't going to go the way you may think it's going to go. If you did, or you want to, write it out. But for me, the beauty of the surprise in working in this medium is having to think on your feet. So go ahead, be flexible, and trust your ensemble that they're going to lead you and show you, even if it's a little tiny seed of an idea, they will be able to show you the next step. All right, I want to get through these next few before we get to the top of the hour and then leave some time for questions. So again, you can catch me on Skype or Twitter or Facebook, eMazunik, E-M-A-Z-U-N-I-K. Just going to take a quick second here to check in, make sure that folks can hear me, make sure all right. Good, good, good. All right, number 6, isolation. I think this is definitely, I've felt this. You come to a think tank, you meet some other players, you meet some other composers. You go, oh great, here's my email, here's an email list, let's all stay in touch. Then you get home, life gets busy, it's a month after the think tank, it's 2 months, it's 6 months, it's next year, and you haven't talked to anybody. Have you felt that? Have you experienced that? I know I have. So many years, time in, time out. And what that usually results in is, for me, poor habits. I start to develop these poor habits. I'm in my own world, in isolation, and I develop these poor habits, frankly. And what I call an atrophied aesthetic, or just thinking that my way is the only way to work with real-time composing, or my approach is the only approach. And I start to get really nearsighted, really myopic as to how to develop and grow myself. And I know I'm guilty as charged for saying, hey, I'll stay in touch with you, talk to you soon, and then, like I said, 6 months goes by or a year goes by, and you haven't checked in with anybody. And it's to your own loss. It's to your own detriment that you're in isolation. With that being said, I'm really a fan of people developing their own styles and dialects, and I think it's very cool to see, even in the past couple years, a lot of different dialects and ways of using sound painting or ways of composing in the moment to start to develop. And I think that's healthy. I encourage that. But when you're so isolated that you're just on your own, doing what you do, and you're not in touch with other people, I think that's really where we can suffer as composers. The solution is have a conversation. It's really that simple. You know, I started to keep a contact list. I started to work with a friend and assistant, Dennis Schaefer, and he's helped me maintain a contact list of people who I've just met, or people I want to stay in touch with, or people who might be interested in what I'm doing, might be interested in partnering or helping me out. or even better yet, might be interested in what I have to offer them and what I have to give them and serve them with. And I set reminders in my calendar to stay in touch with people at regular intervals. I know it's not necessarily that sexy. I know it's not very spontaneous to go ahead and say, Skype with Gustav in 2 weeks, or talk to Walter in a month. But I really have to set those reminders to stay in touch with people at regular intervals. And I actually have a note here to talk to a few of these folks that I owe some communication to. And that's really, really just the bedrock simply of keeping a conversation going and setting yourself reminders to stay in touch with your community and other people at regular intervals. So whether that's every week or every month, whatever works for you. But go ahead and keep that conversation alive. And you'll be surprised at how much that'll do for you as a composer. And then number 7, taking yourself for granted. And what do I mean by this? Undervaluing your own uniqueness as a composer. And selling yourself short in your work, in your promotion, in your shows, in everything. Really sort of saying, aw shucks, or oh thank you, that's what I do is, oh it's just this weird thing over here. No, what you do is very special, very unique, really groundbreaking, really cutting edge, really adventurous. And I think you should be acknowledged for that. And I think you should feel free to acknowledge yourself for that. And that's getting a bit into the solution. But before I get there, just wanted to tell you 2 stories where I took myself for granted. I remember meeting with Tanya Kalmanovich, a great violin player, for coffee. And she said, this is a few years back, she said, people are really excited to be part of the New York Sound Painting Orchestra. I said, really? I said, oh, wow. And she said, they're really looking to you as sort of someone who has something really valuable to offer, and having studied with Walter for so long. I said, really? And I had really taken this, as I call it, an aw shucks approach to what I do. And I really had to look at myself in a different way after that conversation. And think of myself as someone of value, someone who has something valuable to offer in my composing. And then the second one I'll give you is, recently Walter Thompson and Butch Morris got together for a talk at Columbia. And I showed up as an observer, sitting in the back. And they each have a chance to show a video introducing themselves to the whole room. And Walter's turn comes, and he puts up a video. And there's a duo sound painter moment of me and him working together. And I had no clue he was going to show that. He had surprised me. And that really, really invited me to think of myself as, wow, I've got something of value to give. I've got something important to share. Let me share it with people. So that was really disarmed me and really blew me away. And I learned that I shouldn't take myself for granted. I should really celebrate, and that's number 7 here, because we're coming up to the top of the hour. Celebrate it, own it, acknowledge my individual voice, and surround myself with a close circle of support, of cheerleaders, as I like to call them. People who really celebrate what you do and give you that encouragement, because it can be really, really lonely sometimes, and it can be really easy to discount what you do. So I'd encourage you, don't take yourself for granted. Don't discount what you do. Celebrate your voice. Celebrate what you have to offer. And that's the solution to the 7th obstacle. Ta-da! So, it's the top of the hour here. I'm so honored you're here with me. And for those of you who tuned in a little late, let me go ahead and review really quickly. Obstacle 1 is lacking clarity. Number 2, not listening. Number 3, shiny object syndrome. Number 4, poor communication. Number 5, rigidity. Number 6, isolation. And number 7, taking yourself for granted. And the solutions. Videotaping yourself. Receiving what your ensemble has to give you. Number 3, developing your own personal glossary for study. Number 4, getting really clear on your 15-second introductory elevator speech. Number 5, flexibility, dancing with surprise, taking what your group gives you and getting outside of your head and in the moment. And number 6, conversation, talking to people, getting on Skype, getting on Facebook, starting those conversations with people. And number 7, celebrating. So I want to celebrate the fact that you are here with me today. I'm going to segue into this next part of my webinar. So I hope you got immense value and you got some food for thought and some practical steps to take. I would love to hear back from you what you found really valuable out of those last 7 points, what you agreed with, what you disagreed with. Let's keep the conversation going. So I would love to hear feedback from you, either, like I said, via Skype, you can find me, or Facebook, also on Twitter, or good old-fashioned email. My handle on all of those is eMazunik, E-M-A-Z-U-N-I-K. And for those of you with me here, I want to extend to you an invitation to join me and give you a preview of what I'm talking about with the Realtime Music Academy. The simple question is, are you game to join me? Are you game to partner with me and come alongside me over 2012 in this new adventure I'm calling the Realtime Music Academy? If I had brass and snare, I would give you a little fanfare. Da-da-da! Well, what is the Realtime Music Academy? Here's what I came up with. I'm calling it in-depth training for a new tribe of composers, improvisers, and music educators. How's that sound? Realtime Music Academy. And here's a link where you can go ahead and sign up and join. www.realtimemusicacademy.com/join. Again, realtimemusicacademy.com/join. So you might be saying to yourself, what is in this Realtime Music Academy? Great question. This is going to be where I'll give a monthly 60-minute webinar in real-time composition. So I will do basically what I'm doing here for you today. Every month, I'll send you a link to another webinar in real-time composing. So once a month, you'll get access to in-depth training on different topics of interest. I'll go ahead and give you a little heads up on what that's going to be in a few minutes here. And also have MP3s, so you not only be able to watch, but you can listen. I'll give you some action guides, some notes, some of my own notes, and different PDF transcriptions of what we covered. So you can read, you can listen, you can watch, and you can really get as much value out of these webinars as possible. I'm planning to interview people, interview different authorities. I have a long list of people who are working not only with sound painting, but people who are working with conduction, or people who are working with groups like La Bomba de Tiempo down in South America. People working all across the map in real-time composing. And I'm really deliberate about using that because I'm interested not only in serving people who are working just with sound painting, but also casting that net out and casting that communication out to people who are working in a very, very similar medium, but might be working with different languages, different systems, and how can we learn as that for people who are coming from a sound painting background? How can we gain and glean from that? I want to have live Q&A where I'm keeping the conversation going with you all in real time or by email, getting that feedback, and having a members forum. Plan to set up a simple members forum where you can really have a community of support, where you can throw out ideas, say, hey, here's this idea, does anyone have a solution? And really get not just my feedback, but also get the feedback of other people involved in the Realtime Music Academy. And really develop that community of support, not only of acknowledgement, but of new ideas. And here are some topics I plan to include. Ensemble rehearsal strategies. How do I work with a group? How do I train a group? What are some strategies I use when I'm working with Zaha? How do we warm up? What things do we cover? How do we work with palettes, with notation? How do we collaborate with dancers? We'll also plan to cover tips on enrolling and maintaining ensemble. You might say, gee, I've just tried to start a group. It's really tough going. No one's showing up to rehearsals. What do I do? Wow, I just lost 2 players, and now I don't know what to do. How do I get a couple new players back? How do I start working with a dancer or an actor? How do I get them on board? How do I get them to a rehearsal? How do I get them to a show? We'll cover that. We'll cover successful fundraising campaigns and ideas and strategies for that. Like I said with Zaha last spring, we did a Kickstarter campaign that was actually overfunded. We got more than our amount we were searching for. And that enabled us to tour the East Coast and to really have an amazing spring. So I'll share with you my strategies for how I made that a success in the spring and how you can do that for yourself. Guides to guerrilla and street performances. Some of you are really, really interested in working with and doing stuff outdoors, doing stuff in public, doing stuff that's a bit more provocative or a bit more out there. I love it. So I'll share with you some of my tips for how to do those safely, how to do those wisely, and how to do those really in a fun spirit. I'll include some applications for your pedagogical work, other teaching. I know some of you are really working in different schools with young children. You might include sound painting as a part of your curriculum. It may be the whole course. You may use it on the side. So I'll talk about how I use sound painting in teaching. I might work with it a different way with a different age group, or a different way if we're also working on different repertoire in a band or an orchestra. And then I'll also give you access to my personal glossary. You'll see what I see. You'll see my diary of what I'm working with, what I'm studying, what are my notes, what are my ideas for phrases, how am I putting the language together, and how I'm setting the faults, how I'm working with sound painting, how I'm diving into conduction and studying that. So you get instant access to my personal glossary. Here's some results I really want you to have as part of this. Just being trained to lead your groups with authority and confidence, being able to really attract and cultivate creative partnerships with other groups, with people who have funds, with audiences, with media, and basically an increased confidence in your work, knowing that you're armed, you're ready, you've got the knowledge and skills to go ahead and grow and really reinvent how we compose music. I also want you to have a richer community support with your tribe. Not just once a year at a think tank or at a meeting, but year round, having this support day in, day out, week in, week out. So here are some bonuses I'm going to throw in. Sweeten the deal if it's not sweet enough. I'll give you, if you join today, the Real-Time Music Academy, I'll give you a 20-minute VIP Skype session. We'll do one-on-one. We'll get into the nitty-gritty, figure out what you want to cover, what are some topics of interest to you, what are your biggest frustrations. We'll get really specific about it, and I'll get your feedback, and you'll help me really co-create upcoming months of content for the Real-Time Music Academy. And you get an opportunity to join me in this new movement I'm starting as a founding member. You can say, hey, I got in at the ground level. I'm a founding member. And just be able to wear that with pride. And lastly, it's going to be fun. Honestly, let's geek. Let's do it. I could do this all day. I've already gone over an hour. Thank you for sticking with me. And as you can see, I love, love, love this subject. So you'll be able to jump in right with me, and we'll have tons of fun. So what's the value of a membership in the Real-Time Music Academy? Well, just 60 minutes of coaching in real-time composing. I ask $100. If you were coming to me off the street and I didn't know you and hadn't developed a relationship with you, I'd ask $100 flat, just out of the gates, per hour. And that 20-minute Skype session, I would charge at least $50 just to get on and talk to somebody for 20 minutes. Again, what I would ask someone approaching me for the first time to study. So that together is $150 value for what I'm offering to you. An investment for you to be a part of the Real-Time Music Academy. You know, I checked in. Some people recommended I include this as $97 a month. Charge people $97 a month. Ask for that. I said, no, I want to lower it. Other sources I consulted, other people I checked in with, said $47 a month. That's a pretty standard rate for a membership site. No problem. I said, it's definitely worth that, but I want to make it really, really accessible to people. And I want people who are passionate about this to join me. But I also want you to have some, as they say, skin in the game, some investment, and go ahead and put your money where your heart and your mouth is and go ahead and invest in your growth as a composer. So I'm asking for $27 every month. And for those who invest that, you will have instant access to the Real-Time Music Academy. I want to give you a guarantee here. It's going to be $27 a month after a 30-day trial. So if you go to that webpage I showed you, I'll give you the link again. You go and sign up today. Won't charge you a dime. You can try it out for 30 days. I'll send out your first video soon, and you will be able to give it a shot. If you don't like it, after 1 month, if you didn't get incredible value out of this, go ahead and contact me, and I'll just cancel your subscription right there. So I'm taking the risk here. You're at no risk to try this out, give this a shot, see if you like it, and you can leave at any time. So it's a reoccurring membership, $27 each month. You sign up, it's $27 after 30 days. You leave, no more charges. So I want to be open and upfront and transparent about that and give you my guarantee, because I think this is so valuable that I think you'll see immediate and great value out of it. But if you don't worry about it. I don't want your money anyway then. Give it a shot. Try it out for 30 days and see if it's not really, really solid. I'll ask you, as I finish up here, do you want to continue as you were before? Or do you want to join me on this adventure? This is my plan for this 2012 year. This is my new adventure, a new journey for me. And I can't wait to join. I can't wait to see you join me on this. I'm really looking forward. And the question is, are you in? So join the movement. Real-Time Music Academy. In-depth training for a new tribe of composers, improvisers, and music educators. And the link again is www.realtimemusicacademy.com/join. So thank you all for sticking on this. I know we went over an hour. I was shooting for an hour, but got really into it here. So I wanted to sign off by saying thank you and keep up your inspiring work. I'm really honored to be a part of this tribe and looking forward to what we're going to create together. And again, the link is realtimemusicacademy.com/join.